This interview is a part of the Oklahoma Historical Society's oral history program, Living Legends Collection. The original date for this interview is September 1970. This interview was conducted by Mr. Pendleton Woods and Mrs. B.L. or Bob Fener. That's F-E-N-N-E-R. The interviewee is Mrs. Cora Nigh. That's N-E-I-G-H of Enid, Oklahoma. This interview is being re-recorded on October the 23rd, 1985 for inclusion in the permanent collections of the Oral History Program by Judith Michener.
This is Penn Woods in Enid in September 1970. We're interviewing for the Oklahoma Living Legends on the date of the annual reunion of the pioneers of the Cherokee Strip. And doing our interview this evening is Mrs. Bob Fener, Theo Fener. And Ms. Fener, I'll let you take it from here and introduce our guest, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Penn. It's my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Cora Neigh, who is one of the pioneers, one of the 12 people who are here today. And I'd like to ask Mrs. Neigh to tell us something about her trip into the territory. She told me just a few minutes ago that she came into the Oklahoma Territory with her sister and brother-in-law. Is that correct, yes, Mrs. Neigh? Yes, well, would you tell us something about it and the weather conditions and perhaps some of the work that was involved in making this big move and where you came from and the length of time it took you to get here? This is Mrs. Neigh speaking now.
Well, we started about in May in 1901 and come in the covered wagon. And it had taken us 14 days to come. And we camped out of the night, but I wouldn't lay on the ground, make my bed on the ground, so they would sleep on the ground, and I'd go in sleep in the covered wagon, because I was afraid to sleep on the ground. And it had taken 14 days to come down. And after we got here, Daddy and Mother came down on the train, and they met us at Enid, and we drove out then to the little town of Carrier, and we stayed at Carrier for, I don't know how long it was, but we lived at a dugout right across the road from Grandpa Neigh's, and then he rented a place close to Enid, and we stayed there till they lived there for 2 years, but I was married in 1902 at that place.
Miss Neigh, where did you meet your husband, and where was his home before he came to Oklahoma?
He lived at Dover before they made the run, and they run it from Hennessy. Made the run from Hennessy.
You mentioned that your mother and father came. But you didn't give us their names. Would you please tell us their names and the number of members of your family that came down to the territory with you folks?
Well, their names were Cavalier, and my sister and brother-in-law name was Mays. Them was the ones that I come to Oklahoma with. Yeah, and Myrtle, the one that I came with, she was oldest. I had three sisters, and then they went on to Texas after they left us at Carrier. And then at Carrier's where I met my husband in the dugout. We were still living in the dugout, and Arthur Neigh was his name.
Was it very hard to get the land under cultivation, and what were some of the problems that you encountered, your family encountered those first few years?
Well, he had already been there, you see, for about 8 years before we were married. And he had all this straightened out pretty good because he had a little one-roomed house, and we lived there for 2 years, and then we built another home, 4-roomed house. And so my mother and daddy then, they moved from the Fitzpatrick place where we lived down to Enid, and they moved in our little home and lived there till my mother passed away.
What about the schools? I understand you had 2 sons.
Yes.
Would you give us their names and tell us something about the possibilities of education in those early days?
Well,
Your daughter-in-law says that you sold 20 acres for a school site. Will you
Yes.
tell us something about that?
well, yes, the railroad come through and made the little town of Carrier, and we sold 20 acres to the town of Carrier. And then we bought 20 acres from his brother, Dr. Frank Neigh. They joined places. And he bought 20 acres from there to make our 180 acres.
Well, where was the school built?
It was built on the corner of our place.
How large
Northeast.
was it?
How large a
How
place?
large was the school, Mrs. Neigh?
Oh, it was a high school.
It was a high school.
Yeah.
Well, you made really a great contribution to the state then by
Yes, we sure
by
did.
having a school right on your own land.
That's right.
Wonderful.
Yes, it sure was.
I might say here that you're looking mighty pretty today. You have beautiful hair.
Thank you.
And you to be here
I-
today. Your hair is just beautiful, and
I
have
feel
a-
pretty good too.
Ms. Neigh
just
has a
fine.
sparkle in her eye and a jolly smile, like she really enjoyed being a pioneer.
Mhm.
Well, tell us what your sons are doing, and did they?
Oh, yes, I have 2 boys. Chester's the oldest, Chester and Russell. And Chester, he's out on the farm. He's been farming the place ever since I moved to town. I moved to town in 43, and they'd taken over the place at that time. And I worked for a cafeteria there here in Enid for 15 years, Miss O'Mealy. And then I bought a little home at 117 West Mulberry, and my other boy, Russell, he's working for the city, and he lives next door to me. So,
Ms. O'Mealy's now in Oklahoma City. You know,
Yes,
you
I-
made quite a contribution there because she
Yeah,
has one of the largest restaurant operators in Oklahoma City now.
she tried to get me to go with her down there, but I just couldn't leave home.
Do you have any other things you would like to add about the? How long was it after you homesteaded your land that they put up the fences and?
Well, I don't know. He had all that arranged and fixed when
Mhm.
but I did get out and help him quite a lot with our work. The children were a little small, you know.
You mentioned that
Before.
you mentioned that you were near Enid about that time. How large was Enid at then? What was the population?
Don't have any idea.
It was just a very small village.
Village, yes. Very small village at that time. I don't have any idea how large it was. We always had to haul our wheat to Enid in the wagon. It'd taken us all day to go and to come and go back. Never got home till way late in the evening. And at night, lots of times she'd go by herself, and I'd have to stay at home by myself. So I didn't like that very good. I was always kind of a coward after dark. But we had an old dog, and he was pretty good. Lay on the doorstep and hear the wagon a-coming, you know. So I'd know that he was a-coming somewhere, 'cause they could hear the sound of that old wagon.
Mrs. Neigh, your daughter-in-law, is here. I'm going to ask her to
Yeah.
kind of remind you of some things. She seems to.
Let her tell a few.
Well, she can think of some things in the past that are very helpful. Mrs. Neigh, would you kind of come over here now and ask her a few questions, I think that, or a reminder of some things, rather.
Can you tell about who came with Dad Neigh when he came into the Cherokee Strip, about his brother and how they took the run side by side?
Now they come from Kansas down to.
Didn't they come from Hennessy Line down into the Cherokee Strip?
Well, now they first come from Kansas down to Dover, and then that's where they went from Dover to have the race, you know. And he had he had two sisters and three brothers, two sisters and three brothers. Dr. W.F. Neigh, most everybody knowed him, I guess, and his doctrine at Enid. He started in early. He was an osteopath.
Can you tell about how they brought this little one-room house to the Strip?
When they made of course, it was quite a little while after they moved this little house up on the line for the boats that lived put it on the line, so they side by side, they taken the place side by side, and they moved the little house from Dover up there and lived in that for quite a while. But they lived in a tent, I suppose, somewhere or other, till they got the house moved, and all quite a little while after that. And so I don't know. I guess that's.
Well, Ms. Neigh, this has been very interesting, and we certainly do thank you for this.
I can't remember very much about it. It's been so long ago.
Well, you have been very helpful, and this will be retained and kept for a long, long time. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.